Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode 404 of Stu and the Nunn. And we are here in August. I am joined by my good friend, Mr. Wolf, who has been on the show, of course, many times. I think you may be surpassing Toby now in the number of times you've been on. And we are in August already, my friend. Where has summer went? Can you hear me?
Yep, I'm sorry. My froze up for a second.
Uh,
Come back
yeah, I
now.
was just saying, now that we're in August, where has summer went? How are we already here? I mean,
I
down
don't know.
south, kids are
July
already
4th
back
was
in
brutal
school.
enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, down south, Tennessee and below the Mason-Dixon line, I think all the kids are going back into school or have one already. But not up north yet. We still got a bit. But yeah, how you been? I know you've had a lot
I've
going
been
on.
well.
So
A lot going on. Many things. A lot to catch up on. We got a lot to talk about going forward. So I've been excited to come back on.
yes, thank you. It's been probably a month or a couple months or so, but we've missed a few shows. We do just think life gets busy and just hard to keep up on everything and guests that come and go. So thank you everyone for joining us. Make sure you follow us on our socials. You can see the Linktree account below, and we'll cover our sponsors and all that later. But want to thank everyone that's tuning in either live or catching this later. If you're following up and watching after it's been recorded. So uh, we'll cover a little bit of current events right now, Wolf, and then let's talk about some of the topics we were going to talk about. But just, I mean, you have someone that we've talked about on the show. You have worked in, why am I freezing? You have worked in this administration. You worked in the last administration of Trump's first administration. This one, you were part of the campaign. You've been very connected politically and with things going on even before Trump, obviously, and seen a lot of things. You worked in, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think NIH, VA, FDA. Was it FDA also?
FDA, yep.
Yeah,
HHS, yep.
yeah, HHS.
ASPR, ASPR.
So you worked with Dr. Fauci. You know that whole Dr. Redfield, that whole crew, and all that kind of stuff. So we saw
Yep.
some. Dr. Fauci is not winning friends or influence people in the last week or so, but today he was held in contempt via committee and recommended to into the Justice Department. You think that's going to fly?
I think he will be put up for a contempt. Whether he gets convicted of it or not is another question. There's been a lot of stuff going around lately. Like, did he give up his Fifth Amendment rights by making an opening statement during his testimony the other day? From what I've been able to determine, no, that did not, give up his Fifth Amendment rights. I had one interesting theory as to why he kept pleading the Fifth. Um, as you know, the Biden pen debacle has not been completely resolved yet
Yeah, it has
as
not
to
been tested
whether,
in the court. Yes.
yeah, whether everybody that he signed for is actually pardoned, right? It's still floating out there. And the one that Fauci got, which I believe was the very last pardon Biden granted before he walked out of the office that day, is one of those that may be contested. And I think Fauci was pleading the Fifth because if he had said anything under the assumption that he was pardoned, therefore he couldn't be tried for anything, if that then turns out to be false because his pardon was invalid, he then would have possibly hugely incriminated himself. So in a way, I can understand where the caution was there, but I think the process was very bad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a lawyer and I haven't played one on TV, but listening to a lot of the talking heads, there were a few different comments or perspectives on, well, since he was already pardoned, of crimes, even the questioning of pardon for past or potential future crimes or whatever it is, just goes
For
against
12 years or 14 years, yep.
Yeah, it goes against the purpose of the pardon. It's supposed to be for people that are convicted and found guilty and afterwards, not for maybe one day kind of stuff. But if he was given that, then he is not allowed to claim the Fifth Amendment because he can't self-incriminate himself because he's already pardoned. Some people are lawyers and smart folks are slicing and dicing that, saying I think that's what drove the contempt charge today, right? Because he can't plead the Fifth under constitutional right. Number one, and number two, it doesn't look like and I think Holly did it great when he was just like, what color's your tie? What color's the carpet? And stuff, just to show the hypocrisy of just pleading the Fifth nonstop.
Yep.
So that, and I heard the other part of, because he made an opening statement, he invalidated himself not to talk. That he made an opening statement.
That one was shot down earlier today. I was looking into that one. That was shot down because, if you recall, the former commissioner of the IRS, who was put up in front of Congress, he had no pardon or anything. She made an opening statement. And the law reads, as far as I was able to determine, that as long as you are giving a character of why you're saying something, then that won't invalidate your Fifth. And they said that Fauci's remarks fell into that that fold.
Okay, I mean that was I think a reach anyways. It seems like the argument of that he was already pardoned means he can't claim the Fifth because it's no thing. And then I think aren't they because the pardon also ended on the 20th of January, it does not cover any future stuff. If he talked at all, I mean, he could mess up and potentially perjure himself, and he wouldn't have been protected by that pardon.
Correct.
I've heard that's why he did the Fifth Amendment. Something like he was just nonstop, just going to say it over and over and over. So what do you think?
I truly believe the Democrats don't care. They know there is no repercussion. They know they're not going to be tried on it. They know they're not going to be charged. So they're going to disobey the law anyway. I believe that they truly feel that there is nothing they can do that they will be held accountable for.
Well, wasn't it Rahm Emanuel was found in contempt and nothing happened? But Steve Bannon was and went to jail.
But look where Bannon, it was the Democrats that found him in contempt, not the Republicans.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah. But Rahm Emanuel wasn't when he spied on journalists and did all that. He was found in contempt and they didn't even ever pursue charges. So, do you think this is something that will pursue? Do you think this contempt? I mean, what's the max he can get? $1 year and $1,000 is the max he can get.
Times 111 times. So, yeah.
Was he charged?
$111,000.
Was it 111 charges?
111 times that he pleaded it.
Right.
So,
was it
is each plead a separate charge?
Yeah, I don't know. What's your over under on he'll ever get punished at all?
I think he'll get a slap on the wrist and an ugly letter and something left in his permanent file.
Which, when you collect a $400,000 retirement, I'm not sure you really care what's in your file.
I don't think he's overly worried.
No.
He's also 86 years old.
You were close to him at one time, right?
I worked with him directly during COVID. Our buddy, Mr. Caputo, and I and others worked with him on a near daily basis.
Some people have talked about how he changed over the years.
Yes.
And that, he was, which kind of goes along a little bit with his diary thing, which is also weird. Why would you keep a diary on a government laptop? I mean, when I first heard they got his diary, I'm like, did they do a warrant and go in his house and take his little leather notebook? No. And then I found out, no, he was writing this on his government provided laptop. Smart guy, medically, scientifically smart, may have been missing some common sense. Or so full of himself that he thought he was above the law.
Yep. And they got his phone too. Apparently he was misusing his government phone as well.
Yeah, his iPhone, his government provided iPhone is now in the hands of, I don't know, either a committee or the Justice Department or something.
No, the committee. Rand Paul or Senator Paul has it.
Right. So obviously they'll rip that thing apart, look through every note, picture, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think he's going to end up with a legacy unlike what he thought he was going to be. Kind of like Biden. Biden thought he was going to have this great legacy, and obviously he has not, and will continue not to be. He's not even he's kind of an afterthought, and if anything, he's a punchline, which is sad
Very much
because I
so.
know Fauci did a lot of great things and decades of service, and I'm sure made a lot of headway and improved and helped save people's lives through his research and his skills and talents. To have it end like this because of becoming a late blooming narcissistic person, I don't know. But yeah, we'll have to see. But I don't know what other government things he used, but they'll find it if he used it, I guess. So he's not as good as losing laptops like Hunter Biden. Uh, any other thoughts on that, on this whole thing today? And is it
It's just really sad. I think the amount of money that he made under government service was abysmal. I think the arrangements that they have to allow them to do that, I think, is counterproductive and is not what working in government service is about. And I think they should relook and rescind, that capability. I think it leads to people doing things for the wrong reasons, and this is a glaring example.
so? Just if you can educate our listeners and viewers a little bit, you know it better than me, having worked in government service like you have. There's GS rates and SES rates and wage rates and all that stuff. But for people with specialized skills and capabilities, at doctors and scientists and stuff, they have the ability to pay them above and beyond what the standardized financial rates are, right? And that's kind of what he got paid
Yep.
under. Is
Yep.
there is there a cap to those at all, or was he making the
Not
cap?
that I'm aware of. No, he at one point was the highest paid government employee, period.
Right, and that's mostly so they can attract and keep that talent and not losing to the civilian workforce.
Well, the
I mean,
issue is he gets in there and he making this money, but you can't fire him.
right.
That's the problem. If you find out that they're doing questionable things, there's no recourse to be able to remove them easily. And I think that's where the problem is.
Right, right. Well, that's something that has been inherent in government for a while, right? I know President Trump in the first administration went after the VA about that quite a bit,
Yep.
because
Yep.
and try to make it easier. And I just saw something in the last week, or are they making some changes now that allows either DOW or someone to be able to fire contractor or fire government employees easier. Did you hear about that? I just caught
What
a
they're
blip.
doing right now, if I recall, the most recent thing is if they've had a bad performance rating at the lowest performance level, that they're supposed to be removed.
Okay, they don't get a
So
second or whatever. If they've gotten the lowest rating, then they should be
if they've
fired.
gotten the lowest rating the last X amount of days or whatever, the past review, that they are to begin removing those people.
Okay, that's some level of accountability for sure. Yeah, they wow. All right, well that's kind of it on big current topics. There's a ton of others, but I know we do want to kind of talk about an unfortunate incident that you just went through, and I've been through it myself, but more recently this last week or so you were going through it, and that was unfortunate loss of your father, um about a week ago, maybe just right at about a week ago, a little over a week ago.
Just a little
um
over a week ago, correct.
yeah.
Um,
What would you like to talk? I mean, obviously a very hard thing, but I'd like to give you a chance to kind of talk about him and his service, and let's just talk about kind of what our fathers, especially those that retire and do service, what that impact is on us.
both of us had fathers that made a huge impact on our careers and set the stage for us. We both come out of military families that have, long service. Dad had 38 years, retired as a W-4. He had a very interesting career where he actually joined the military in 1959, enlisted in the Ohio National Guard. Went to OCS, I believe it was in 19. Yep, that's him swearing me in right there. As a second lieutenant in the Ohio National Guard. He went to OCS to get his commission, I believe it was in 1964. Got commissioned, was going to be a helicopter pilot, found out that you had to do a mandatory tour in Vietnam, decided that wasn't the route he wanted to go, switched over to field artillery, and then took a position in the Air Defense Artillery Battalion in Ohio, where he was there for 13 years as battery commander and full-time training officer. He had a unique position where he was a full-time National Guardsman for the state. Not a lot of people understand the difference between, say, an AGR tour versus a technician tour. He basically was similar to like a postal service employee that wears a military uniform. Being in the military was a prerequisite for having his job. And he worked on the state side of things. The other part was, of course, the federal side, the Title X guys. What was unique is that in the Carter years in 1979, there was a huge rift across the forces, and he was caught up in that. And he was promoted to major, couldn't accept it because it was ripped down to an E5, which was the last enlisted position he held before getting commissioned. Within 24 hours was promoted to E6. And then a few months later after that, he was promoted to E7, held that for 18 months, and then was direct commissioned to a warrant officer too.
So he was a captain, and they did a RIF, and they, not for any fault of his, just took him all the way down from 03 to E5?
Yep.
Because he was an AGR technician, or?
No, he was a technician, not AGR. He was a technician.
He was a technician. Was it because the job profile was now considered an E5 spot? So it wasn't performance or anything like that. He just went from captain to...
Yep. It happened to a whole bunch of his friends. He had guys that went from lieutenant colonel down to W3. Eventually, I know of at least 4 or 5 of the people he worked with through those years that had the very same thing happen to them.
Wow.
It was a thing among the pilots in the state. Many of them got up and were in company command, went from a captain, couldn't get any higher. Then they went and took a warrant officer to stay flying, so they'd go to a W2. My high school assistant principal did that, as an example. And he worked his way back up to W4, which basically is a equivalent to a major, if I'm not mistaken. Pay scale was roughly equivalent to a major.
DW4, I think, would kind of be considered. Wouldn't it be considered a 05, like equivalent to lieutenant colonel?
It could be. I could be wrong. Yes.
I think a 3 would have been a major. I think a 4 would have been considered in a 05, because when it came out with a master warrant, the 5, warrant officer 5, that's kind of equivalent to a full bird. Yeah, it's pretty up there.
But he was an auditor for the state. He ended up being the senior auditor for the National Guard in the state of Ohio. And the only time he ever got deployed was for the '96 Olympics in Atlanta, when he was the one that was sent down as the rep for the state, and he ran the supply area for all the stuff that they were given to guardsmen that were supporting the Olympics that year. So he ran the supply chain system to make sure they could account for all the stuff they gave out and had to bring back.
Wow. And he did. And how many years was he in?
38.
Wow. It's and when did he retire as?
W4.
W4. So 03 down to E5 and climbed his way back up. Because when he said, like, when they promoted him again after E7, they went right to W2.
Yep. Direct commission to warrant.
Because he'd already been a commissioned officer, so that must have been.
Yep.
And that was
all he had to do was put a packet in, and within a couple of weeks, it was done.
And that was all based off just the role of a technician he had, and they would just
Yep,
reclass at different pay grades and that kind of stuff.
correct.
And what did he do when he, as a technician, he did M-Day jobs, right? He did UTAs, he drilled weekends.
The M-Day job just followed right along in his case.
And what was his what did he do as an M-Day job? Was that the auditor
Um,
or
he
no?
just did the same thing he was doing before, just
Because
as an M-Day soldier.
would just assign to a unit and just would drill when they would drill and that kind of thing.
Ohio Stark State Area Command. Yep.
Right. All based out of Columbus.
All based out of Columbus. Yeah, he worked in Beetler Armory for, I don't know, 20 some years. When he retired, he was one of the most senior people in the building as far as, the day-to-day workers. Yeah, that one may have been at the Halikoa in Hawaii, one of the many trips that they took out there.
Yeah, you gotta tap into those benefits.
That's after he was retired, happily retired there.
Yeah, he looks like he's in Hawaii. Yeah. But
And then he when he retired, he did his M-Day for 2 more years.
Oh, he did stayed on drilling and just did regular.
He stayed on the drill status for 2 more years after he left full-time status.
I lost you.
A really weird thing is every couple of years at where he was at, once he hits like 24 years or something, they had to go through a retention board. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before.
Like an MEB, like just to see if
whether he gets to stay in uniform or not. And every couple of years, if once an officer, warrant or commission gets up so far, then
as a
they go
technician?
through a retention board every 2 years. And he was sweating, he wanted to build up his retirement. And they kept approving him, kept sending him. And then when he hit this 38th year, he said, you know what? You can get me now. So then when the retention board gets you, you can pull your retirement benefits right away. It was a very strange story.
So every 2 years, once he was a commission, either warrant or full, every 2 years as a technician, they would just re-review.
After he hit like 22 or 24 years, yes.
Okay, yeah, because he was past retirement age.
Yep.
And they just, I guess that's the kind of a quality control check to make sure there's not milking the system or whatever, that they're still productive,
retired on active duty mentality,
road, right, not being what we call road. Yeah, so interesting. Would he sweat that, or do you feel he had that on pretty much lockdown, or just every time
for the first 10 years or so? Yeah, he did, because the retirement pay he would have gotten at 28 versus 38 years is substantially different.
Right, and he keep his weapons qual going, had to keep his PT test going, had to meet height and weight. He just couldn't slack off. Yeah.
Nope.
That makes
nope, not at all.
Stressful, and make sure that he hasn't made any enemies along the way.
No, nobody. But being the auditor, nobody wanted to see him knocking on your door either.
Yeah, it's like Jim Cantori showing up to your town. It's like,
yep. And he actually put some people into the criminal justice system because he found through some of his auditing guys that were stealing M60 parts and selling them.
Tanks or machine guns?
Machine guns.
Wow. The either one would be bad, I guess. Neither one's good, but yeah, that's something. So then, and he retired when?
Wow, I want to say from his technician job, I want to say 1994.
Oh wow, okay. And then then he went on, did M-Day for a couple more years.
Yep.
Yeah. So how was his impact on your military service? What was his job, his life? How did that affect you at all? Was that the inspiration?
Yeah. Very much so. One of the biggest things was early on. I mean, Dad was not one of those life's got to be dress right, dress, all that kind of stuff. He was never like that. Mom could be that way, but Dad was never, that strong of a militaristic type like you would think he
Hmm.
was, as tied to the military as we were. But one of the things that he helped do in the state was help set up the program that allowed college students to serve in the Guard and get their tuition paid.
Oh wow, was Ohio one of the first states that did that?
So I was like the first or second state to do that.
Hmm.
And Dad was part of that pilot program and helped them set that up, on the accounting and all that side, as far as being able to figure out how to fund it and do all that. And he talked me into, this is the only way you're going to be able to go to college. Um, and I knew about this program, like 1979 or something like that, long before I was, out of high school.
Hmm.
But the other part of it is I went into the unit he used to command. He wasn't the commander at the time, but most of the men that were in the unit, the 80A unit, headquarters battery, knew him, served under him. And I never once, not one time ever, heard a disparaging word, ever. Everybody was like, one of the best commanders we have ever had. This is, if you're going to be an officer, you need to be like this. From hearing that from the enlisted guys, that was quite a compliment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The what was his take when you told him you were going to sign, when you were going to join? What was his?
It was like, if I had said otherwise, there would have been a long conversation. Okay, why are you not doing this? What's going on? But he was extremely happy. The guy that swore me in and gave me my enlistment papers and all that stuff was the administrator that worked directly for him when he was the training officer. The guys that he brought in and hired as full-time guys under his staff, when he was a training officer, one of them was the command sergeant major of the unit when they came into Iraq. When I was there, I got to meet up with their guys, and I had known this guy for, at that time, almost 40 some years.
Is that when
It was
Ohio National Guard deployed there?
the unit deployed, and they didn't do their normal jobs. They came in as like basically truck drivers and
Yeah, RCP
security
route
support
clearing,
guys.
whatever. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So you got to, so the sergeant major of that unit was somebody he hired. So yeah, you had to. Did you feel the pressure? Did you feel like you had a bar to live up to, and there was a legacy there?
Yeah, if I had, I mean, he was in the armory. I was in a couple of different units in that armory where he worked. Everybody, knew who my dad was. They kept an eye on me. They did a lot of comparisons. But Dad never said to me, never came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm hearing things. You're screwing up here." Never heard that.
You never served under his command, right? You never served in his unit.
No, not directly, not directly.
Yeah. My poor son did. My poor son was one of my medics. I was his first sergeant.
Oh, really?
Yes, it was some immense pressure on him.
Well, let me ask you this: your dad was active duty, right?
Yep. Yeah, my dad did. Yeah, his whole time was
For
active.
for how many years was it?
22.
22. So you traveled around with him every time he moved, every time he got a new assignment or a new station. You guys followed along, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was born at Bragg. We lived in Devens, lived in Panama, lived in Arizona. Yeah, we went all over the place. Yep.
As my dad did not move like that.
Right.
They only moved if they transferred a job or whatever. He was the battalion training officer. Like I said, he was a technician, so it wasn't his M-Day job directly. For 13 years in one location where I grew up. So he filled several jobs within the battalion during that time, but his technician job as the training guy never changed.
Right.
A couple of times he was a battery commander, or he might have been the assistant operations officer, for their M-Day job.
military brat, but not what people typically think of you move every couple of years, right? In the
That's
same
right.
way, the first part of my career, I did almost 10 years active before I went to, we moved from Texas to Alaska to all over the place. So it's the same kind of concept. But then I went in the guard, and then then we ended up moving from Alaska to New York, and I was bound. Then it was just me driving, but we weren't relocating per se. But yeah, it was different when you're active duty military brat for sure. I know they're getting
You know,
better. I heard that they're trying to keep people in, cut down the change of stations and trying to keep people at units longer and locales to give a better
or
quality
at
of life
least
for
at the same base if they can.
right, right. Which is great if you like the area. It sucks if
Uh,
you're at Fort Sill or somewhere that's Fort Lost in the woods or something. I mean, there's probably duty
Stuck up in
stations.
Adak, Alaska.
Well, yeah, maybe not Anchorage for sure. ADAC, no. But if it's a place you're from or you like, hey, Hawaii, Alaska, whatever, like you'll definitely love to stay there a number of years. But if it's not a great duty station, you probably can't. You don't want to stay. And you're like, I'll pay for my own move. But yeah, same thing with the guard. It's if you're a technician, you're a technician. If you're AGR, no matter, yeah, you're just going to drive around the state. You're not necessarily going to be
In
PCS for the most part.
in the late 70s, they could not give away AGR jobs. Nobody would take them because at that time you were subject to being recalled to active duty,
Right.
to support different stuff, or you could be moved. If you're an AGR now in a guard unit, it's not quite that way. Oh, I think I lost you. We'll hold up for just a second and see if he can come back.
Okay, I'm back, but I have a
Yep.
different.
I see your previous one is still scrolling there,
Yeah,
but there it went.
I don't know what happened. I just dropped. I mean, it dropped. The browser stuck, and I was just like, "Let me get back in as fast as I can." Yeah, I don't know what happened. So, yeah, you were saying that back then you were subject to be, if you were AGR, you could be not only recalled but PCS'd or whatever it
Yep.
may be, right?
Yep. I guess, and nobody wanted to go through that. That was, in the guard then.
Right.
But there were three things that he did that were major in his lifetime that he, it was very unique. During the Ohio State prison riots back in the 60s, he was one of the people that were on the entry teams at the Ohio State Penitentiary. So, when that was a big deal back in the day. And then during the university riots of the early 70s, this was really unique. Remember Kent State?
I was gonna say,
That
was
was
he at Kent State?
He was one of the investigating officers for Kent State.
Mm.
And it was one of his best friends that was the commander of the unit that was involved.
Oh, no kidding.
And that was pretty significant. They actually thought the university in our hometown was going to blow up before Kent State did. It was actually worse. Every spring and every fall in Athens, the students rioted. Right after the quarter would end, or between quarters, there's nothing going on, they would all, riot and protest and burn and destroy things. And they burnt down two ROTC detachment buildings in the town. They used to be in a house that got burnt down. They would destroy the downtown businesses, Belk's and others, Woolworths. They'd bust all their windows out, or worse.
So he's involved in, which was definitely news generating and a big deal, and I'm sure had to be careful because the general sentiment at the time in the country was the country was largely
we endured a rash of shit all the time, in school and stuff. We lived in a very liberal town. It made Berkeley seem like Dallas or something.
Right.
It was pretty liberal. Um, but back then, here's the most interesting thing he ever. It was just so strange. In those days, in the Guard, you could not store the weapons and the bolts for those weapons in the same facility. So the weapons were in racks bolted into the arms room in the armory. 6 blocks away, the bolts were stored in the county sheriff's weapons room.
Really?
So they had this mat with all the bolts numbered and everything, into them. And if something was going down or we were going to training or whatever, Dad would have to go to the sheriff, arrange a link up, hand the bolts out to be put into the weapons. And they couldn't do that downtown where the students were rioting because the armory was there. They couldn't get to the armory because of the riots. So they'd load the racks up into a deuce and a half with all the riot gear and everything. And they would have a prearranged, meeting place for everybody to go, disseminate everything. Well, several times we lived way out in the boondocks. And Dad knew that something was going to go down. So he'd take that deuce and a half full of weapons and riot gear, but no bolts. No bolts. The weapons were useless. And he'd drive into our house with the deuce and a half and park it next to the house, out in the middle of the country. And he would leave it there. And then when the call came, hey, the governor has called out the Guard, need to go out and do something, Dad would fire up the deuce and a half, drive it out to wherever the troops were meeting up with the sheriff to get the bolts and everything, and then they'd go do their thing downtown.
Wow.
Try and think of anybody that would do that today, that would drive a deuce and a half full of weapons out to their house because they had no other way to secure it.
Well, everyone I know, if they're driving a deuce and a half full of weapons out to the house, you're not going to see those weapons again. They're not. They're the reason why that is not allowed anymore. They would have fallen off the boat. But that is. But you guys live down the country, so who's going to come out there looking for it, right?
The sheriff who's got the bag of bolts to go in it.
Right. And of course, I'm sure the neighbors love the distinct sound of the deuce and a half winding out, coming down the road, shifting gears. They're like, oh, here he comes. But so once you came in and you served and all that stuff, did he open up more about any of his service, what he saw, advice, giving you guidance on what you should do, not do, keep your mouth shut in basic training, don't do this, don't do that, any of that kind of stuff?
He never, ever did anything like that. He was a very quiet individual. He said what he did for me, he set by example. It wasn't the words that he said so much as the way he conducted his life.
Right.
That was one of the things that everybody said about him, is that he was the most trustworthy man anybody knew. And in his eulogy that I gave during his service, that was one of the things I said. Is one person came up to me at one point in my life and said, I could give your dad a gold bar, come back in 5 years, and I know that gold bar would be there for me to pick up. He served as
to hear that, right? I mean, that's his legacy, right? Because that's how people are remembering him, or a part of his legacy for sure. And wow. What did you think of your service, your deployments, all that kind of stuff? Did you ever talk to you about that?
Not so much, but the reaction that he had when I emailed him that they were going to award me a Bronze Star for my service in Iraq. And this was back when that actually meant something. And to the Vietnam era guys and all that stuff, to get a Bronze Star was a big deal because there was only one way to get it. He had to be in combat.
Right.
In the first question he said, and it took no long, is, who the hell did you kill to get that? Because the assumption was, you had to do something extraordinarily badass to be eligible for that. But beyond that, he was exceptionally proud that, I got to 20. When I hit 20, he said, basically, you need to flip over and do the other side. Keep going. Don't slow down.
Yeah, you're only halfway there. That's the we've
He
had
did 38. His brother did 37. My uncle did 28. Um, his best friend, that was also another warrant, did 41. Um, most of the guys that he worked with did in excess of 35 years.
yeah, good friend of mine who has been on this show. He Bob Van Pelt. He was a state sergeant major of New York. He pinned on sergeant major E9 the same year I came in the army, and I'm the godparents of his grandchildren, of a couple of them. So we're very close families. And he told me when I hit 20, because he was my state sergeant major at the time, New York. And when I hit 20, he was like, "Cool, you're only halfway there." Because of
Yep.
course he went all the way to 40. He did 40 years,
Yep.
and
Yep.
he was like, "Yep, you're halfway there. Keep going." And then I did a couple more. I was like, "No, I'm done." Um, but yeah, that was that mindset of just keep on keeping on. He was him and Mellinger, Sergeant Major Mellinger, were very good friends, and he uh, Bob was, when he retired, was one of the last um, Vietnam members serving. When he retired, when Mellinger retired, he was the last draftee ever to serve. When
Oh,
Sergeant Major
really?
Mellinger, yeah, you probably met Mellinger in Iraq, I'm sure, because Command Sergeant Major Mellinger was in and out of Iraq a lot. But when he retired a few years ago, he was the last Vietnam era draftee to still be serving. And I think
One of the guys that I served with, you remember the big horse patch, right?
first
And
Cav.
first Cav.
Yeah, that's
And
where I
you
went to
remember
war
in
twice.
the Vietnam era first
Oh,
Cav, they had an airborne tab above it.
yep, they did.
He was the last guy eligible to wear the airborne tab above the first Cav patch.
Yeah, that's when they were the air Cav. Yeah, yeah,
And he was a E8. This is in 2003. And
yeah,
when he left Iraq after that tour, he retired. But he used to cause a lot of problems. Like, well, you don't want that airborne tab on there, soldier. That's not right.
yeah. He was the last one. Yeah, yeah. When I was getting out of base, actually getting out of airborne, when I was in airborne school, I was supposed to be going to Vicenza, Italy, and I was on order, temporary levy orders for. And then when I got my orders, I was rerouted to Fort Hood, and I was a mortar guy, 11 Charlie, and I had only trained on the light mortars because I was going to an airborne unit. And they said, "You're going to Fort Hood," and I go, "Oh." They're like, "Who's there?" They go, "First Cav." I'm like, "Cool, air Cav." And the guy's like, "No, tanker Cav." And I was like, "What?" I'm like, "I don't know how to do the four deuce mortar. That's not the Army's problem. You'll figure it out." And that was the first of several times the Army fooled me and disappointed me. But yeah, I was like, air Cav, cool, because I was thinking of all the Vietnam movies. I'd seen Apocalypse Now, seen all that stuff. Like, no, it's not. It's tankers and Bradleys. But
Ouch.
yeah, in fact, it's ironically enough, I was at Fort Hood. Um, I think the first time I reenlisted, I don't remember. But I remember calling my dad and telling him that I had reenlisted. My dad did all 22 years of special forces. He was in SF the whole time. So when I called him and said, "Hey, Dad, I decided to reenlist. I'm going to do more than 3." He's like, "I don't know how you could do that." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I'm thinking he's going to be proud and all this stuff. And I'm like, "I'm reenlisting. I'm staying in." He's like, "No way I would have done it." He goes, "If I went in SF, I never would have went past one tour." I'm like, "Oh crap, what did I get myself into?" you know. But of course, that was a different. And I was raised in that lifestyle the whole time
Yep.
around them. Guys who are literally are walking legends in the Army and the Special Operations community were like hanging out at our house, sleeping in hammocks, doing, all, partying all night. And now I look back and realize they were literally giants of men that did phenomenal things in Vietnam, because they were the only tier 1 unit. The pre-Delta Force, it was Special Forces, was the only tier 1 unit there was. SEALs were still being built and weren't quite there yet, and so on and so forth. But yeah, when I told him I re-enlisted for the first time, he was kind of like, "You're crazy. I wouldn't do that if in regular Army. There's no way."
How did he go through that? How did he get into SF so quickly after enlisting?
Well, he enlisted. He was in for a couple of years. He was like a radar tech or whatever, and then he got out and went back to the block, and then decided that wasn't for him. So he already had a couple years, and SF was being put together, and that would have been around 61, 60,
Oh wow.
61. So I mean, he was early SF, um, and he came back in, and my mom will correct me. She's watching the show. She'll probably type in something, but and he came back in and went into special forces, and then was there from then on. You know, did airborne school, did all that, Halo, everything. So, but yeah, he. I thought I was really going to make him proud, and I did something great, and he was pretty much like, "There's no way I would have went to the regular army and stayed in." So, and something else was interesting was when I was in Desert Storm, and I was over there again, kind of reflecting on these all these adults, my dad's friends who I had no idea really who they were or what they had done. Literally read about it a lot later and heard stories, but back then obviously we didn't have email and all that stuff, and everything was by letters. And I would get these letters from these guys who I knew that were all retired, colonels, light colonels, sergeant majors, a lot of sergeant majors who were just like, they knew me as this little towhead kid running around there. I was Bobby's little boy. And they were just like, I wish I was there stacking mags with you. I'd be in the foxhole and this and that, which I was cool. It was motivating. I was a young buck sergeant. And, and have these, sergeant majors, who I just knew as a family friend, writing me this stuff. And then, and it wasn't until, I had a son deploying to it all kind of came full circle. That one, those letters meant a lot, but it meant a lot more because I understood where they were coming from. They wish they could be, and a lot of them were, their comments were, wish I was right there with you, wish you didn't have
Yep.
to go, that kind of thing. And it wasn't until I had a son deploy that, I kind of, it all made sense. But yeah, these were guys that were, Sante Raid, that were
Mhm.
MACV Dog, that were, their exploits and things have been covered in so many versions, so many different editions of Soldier Fortune magazine, and things like that. And the history of special forces. They were just sitting down and handwriting me letters like, wish I was in the desert with you, you know, stacking mags in a sandy foxhole. So it was interesting. And unfortunately, obviously you're over there, you're packing everything. I wish I would have kept, I'm sure I didn't, because there's only so much stuff you could carry and bring back. But part of my biggest regrets, I wish I would have held on to those. And I have some letters and things like that, but because obviously all those guys have passed on, and they truly were monsters in the special forces community that had done things that a lot of movies we've seen are patterned after and based off their exploits.
And they probably, some of them have either places named after them or names up on the walls of the
Oh
halls
yeah,
there on Bragg someplace,
yeah,
right?
I'm sure. Yeah, they are. A lot of them have VFWs probably named after them, and SF field houses, and you know all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's something about that legacy of carrying on, of being the child to a parent, and then if it works out, then being the parent to another one, that it kind of comes fruition.
Dad was the last of his group to pass on.
Really.
He was 88. Nobody that he ever served with, worked with, or whatever that's still alive. They were all gone. Um, some much earlier from either cancer or whatever disease. Others, they might have been a couple of years older than him and succumbed to something. But there at the end, there was nobody left for him to talk to about it. They were all
Yeah.
gone. It was really sad. And that's one of the things that I watched that to this day causes me more concern is that, what happens when I hit 85, 86, or whatever, and all you guys are gone, or you're the last ones and we're all gone, whatever it is. That scares me more than anything else. Um,
Yeah. Well, he had full
and,
honor.
and watching him have to go through that.
Yeah, but he had full honors, right, in his service and his
He
ceremony.
did.
Yeah.
Yep. The only thing he didn't have was a flyover, but he had 21 guns, um, the full flag ceremony, honor guard at both the burial and the the viewing time.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. More than earned and deserved for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's the guys I served with, I'm going to be seeing some of them next weekend. We all get together, we hunt together, we do all that. And we've kind of all talked that like someday we're going to start dropping off. Right. And someone's going to be left as the last one, you know, and one, no one wants to go early, but at the same time, I don't think anyone wants to be the last one either. You know, yeah, I don't think anyone relishes that, and just even if it means, hey, I got to live longer than anyone else, I don't think anyone wants to look forward to being the one that buries all their buddies and all that kind of stuff.
I personally want to be that person because I want to make sure everybody's taken care of. To me, that's the only reason I would want to do that, is to make sure all my brothers were properly accounted for and taken care of. That would be my mission.
Well, Mr. Wolf, you are the fixer, and if anyone's going to make sure people are taken care of, it is going to be you. We had a scare in the last year about one of our very close friends, and not someone we've served with, but someone that we were very close to. It got very close, and I think we witnessed a whole bunch of guys brought together through social media and blogging respond on a moment's notice and wrap up. So
Literally.
Doesn't have to be someone you sat in a foxhole with, rode in a truck with, or did anything else with, right? It's just someone you built that bond. And I mean, when you look at that group, we're all from different backgrounds, MOS's units. None of us, I don't think, served together in any capacity. May have been in the same country at the same time, but but everyone responded like we were all in the same squad together, and which is just
true statement.
Yeah, I could see, there is that of to be selfish, you don't want to be the last one, but to be selfless, you want to make sure everyone else is taken care of and gets the right honors and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But
that's one of the reasons I'm writing my book, is I want to capture all of this and tell those stories that nobody knows, that
right.
are significant. If you look at some of the contributions of some of these people we know that have done, that few people realize, but had some national significance, those stories need to be told, and that's a reason we do broadcasts like this.
Right. You're
to
right.
make sure
That's
they're
why
captured.
we've highlighted so many stories, and we've interviewed so many people, and why we do the Lima Charlie series, which we need to get some more people on, is to capture those stories before they're lost forever. For sure. But well, hey man, we're getting close to the hour. We talked some current events up front. We talked obviously, the very sad passing of your father, but his legacy, and anything else you want to cover, anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up for the night?
No, other than I'll mention that coming up over the next few weeks is I think it's called the TCAS or TCAV for the Veterans Act that's coming up. I want everybody to take a look at that, and hopefully we can pressure our congressman to get that passed. They pulled that bill the last time it came up because they couldn't get the vote at the last minute. I hope that we can pull this one and get it over the line this time. It's an important bill. It's an omnibus. It has, I think, 26 or more different parts of the bill overall. So it's pretty important. And I hope at some point along the way, the Secretary of the VA, Doug Collins, will see to it and see his way forward to supporting it. To this point, he hasn't, and it's been a big disappointment.
Yeah, so they're expecting this to get put up for vote in the next. This is when they come
when
back.
When they come back, when they come back from recess. Yep.
Right. Yeah. Yep. So, all right, good. We'll have to keep focus on that when it comes out. We probably need to bring some awareness to that for sure. But all right, man. Anything else?
That's all I got, my friend. Okay. And thank you for having me on for this. I appreciate the chance to talk about them.
No, thank you, man. I wish I was down there in your neck of the woods, give you a big hug around your neck and pour one for them. And it's just keep those memories alive and keep them fresh. And, just know that we're better men because of the the fathers that we had, and the memories that we have of them that just others will never get. So
Can I end this on an old Egyptian proverb that I used?
sure.
It goes, I speak the names of those I love. I speak their names so that they shall live again. And that's the thing that I wanted to make sure that we do about all our brothers.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome. That is good. That's a good way to wrap it up. Well, thank you, Wolfro, so much for coming on. Thank you, everyone else, for tuning in. You've seen the things scrolling along the bottom, all of our sponsors. For tuning in later and you're watching, thank you for taking the time to even watch this and the recorded version. Stay in touch. Hopefully we'll be back next week. I think we've got some guests we're working on lining up now that summer's starting to calm down. And actually next week I won't be here because I'm going to be with my brothers. We're doing our annual trip. So hopefully Toby or you or Rob or somebody can pull one off, but I will be in the middle of the Finger Lakes area of upstate New York. So next week, hopefully get one going. But everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for watching Stu and the Nunn, and Wolf and everyone else. Have a good night.